The Apocalypse of Abraham Story Edition. Introduction. The Apocalypse of Abraham is one of the more surprising works to survive from the world of ancient Jewish apocalyptic literature. It begins almost quietly, with a young Abraham working in the idol-making household of his father Terah. Stone gods fall over, wooden gods burn. Abraham asks an increasingly dangerous question: if human hands make a god, who is really serving whom? Then the story changes scale. A voice from heaven calls Abraham away from his father's house. The angel Yahoel becomes his guide. Abraham prepares a sacrifice, encounters the fallen power Azazel, and is carried upward into a terrifying heavenly vision filled with fire, living creatures, wheels, voices, and the hidden pattern of history. From above, he is shown Eden, Adam and Eve, the seduction of humanity, the future of his descendants, the destruction of the temple, judgment, and the coming end of the age. This story edition presents that surviving narrative in clear modern English for reading aloud, text-to-speech, and general reading. It is not a word-for-word translation and should not be cited as one. The ancient work survives only through medieval Slavonic manuscripts, apparently descended from a lost Greek version of an earlier text. The wording here is newly written, while the story's characters, sequence, major images, and theological arguments are kept as close as possible to the surviving apocalypse of Abraham. Where the manuscript tradition is uncertain, this edition does not quietly invent certainty. One especially disputed passage in chapter 29 is retained in neutral form and discussed after the story. Names also vary across editions. The angel often printed as Yahoel or Ioel in older English scholarship is rendered here as Yahoel, a common modern form. The principal textual foundation for this adaptation is the 1918 edition by G. H. Box, with the English translation prepared with J. I. Landsman. That edition is in the public domain in the United States. Modern scholarship was used to check the historical and textual framing, not as a source of wording for the narration. What follows is therefore a story edition, faithful in substance, modern in voice, transparent about uncertainty, and written to let the ancient work be heard again. Part 1. The Gods of Terah. I was Abraham, son of Terah, and in the days of my youth I worked among the gods my father made. His workshop produced images from stone, wood, silver, gold, bronze, and iron. They stood in their places as gods, yet I knew the marks of the tools that had shaped them. I had seen the chisels. I had seen the axes. I had seen the hands that gave them faces. One day I entered the place where the images were kept and found a great stone god named Meramath lying face down at the feet of another image. Meramath was so heavy that I could not raise him alone. I called my father, and together we tried to set the god upright. As we lifted him, Meramath's head broke away. My father did not cry out to the god. He did not wait for a miracle. He asked me for an axe. Then he shaped another stone body and fixed the fallen head upon it. The broken remains of the first image were shattered and discarded. I could not forget what I had seen. Not long afterward my father made 5 more gods and sent me into the town to sell them. I loaded the images onto an ass and set out. On the road we met merchants traveling with camels toward Egypt. One of the camels made a loud sound. The ass was frightened, lurched, and threw the images to the ground. 3 gods broke into pieces. 2 survived. The merchants were willing to pay for what remained, and I managed to bring my father the money he expected. But the broken gods troubled me. I cast their pieces into the river, and they sank beneath the water. As I continued home, a thought grew in me that I could no longer silence. These gods had not saved themselves from an animal. They had not protected their own bodies from the ground. Meramath had fallen in his own temple and could not stand until my father and I lifted him. When his head broke, my father simply made another body for it. If the images existed because of my father's skill, why should my father worship them? Was he not, in a strange sense, more powerful than the gods he made? When I reached home, I gave him the silver from the sale. He rejoiced and said that his gods had blessed me because I had brought back the price of his work. I answered that the blessing seemed backward. Father, you made them. They did not make you. The ones that broke could not help themselves. How can they help us? My words angered him, but the question had already taken hold of me. Part 2. barisat in the fire. Later my father sent me to gather wood for the midday meal. Among the chips and splinters I found a small wooden god. On its forehead was written the name Barisat. I kept the little image with me. When I had kindled the fire, I placed Barisat beside it and spoke to the god as though giving him an important task. 6 inches watch the fire while I am gone. Do not let it go out. If it weakens, blow upon it until it burns strongly again. Then I left. When I returned, Barisat had fallen backward into the flames. His feet were burning. Soon the fire consumed the little god completely until only ash remained. I laughed at the sight, not because the fire was amusing, but because the contradiction had become impossible to ignore. A god had been assigned to guard the fire and had instead been eaten by it. I brought the meal to my father. He ate, drank, and gave thanks to Meramath. I told him that he should praise Barisat instead, because Barisat had thrown himself into the fire to prepare the food. My father asked where the god was. Burned to ashes, I told him. Terah answered that Barisat must have been powerful indeed, and said he would make another one. That answer struck me harder than the destruction of the idol itself. A god could burn in the morning and be replaced in the afternoon. So I began to compare the things my father worshipped. A god made of gold seemed stronger than one made of wood because the metal could be melted and reshaped. A stone god lasted longer than a wooden image. Yet even gold could be worked by men, stone could be broken, and wood could become ash. Then I turned my thoughts to the powers of the world themselves. Fire was stronger than the idols because it consumed them. But water overcame fire. Earth contained water. The sun dried the earth and illuminated the world, yet darkness and clouds hid the sun. The moon and stars appeared and disappeared according to their appointed times. Each thing that seemed supreme was itself limited by something else. So none of them could be the God I was seeking. I said to my father that the true God must be the maker of the heavens, the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the waters, and all that exists within them. While I was still speaking, a voice came from heaven. It called my name twice. Abraham, Abraham. I answered, Here I am. The voice declared that the one I had been seeking was the Creator. I was commanded to leave my father Terah and to go out from his house so that I would not perish with it. I obeyed. I had scarcely passed beyond the house when thunder sounded. Fire descended, and the house of Terah was consumed. The first part of my life had ended in flame. The revelation was about to begin. Part 3. The Call to the Mountain. Again the heavenly voice called to me. I was told not to fear. The one who spoke described himself as the God before the ages, the creator of light, my shield and helper. Then I was given a command that echoed the ancient covenant story. I was to take a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old she-goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle-dove, and a pigeon. I was to prepare a pure sacrifice. Through that sacrifice, I was told, the ages would be opened before me. I would see things I had never seen and learn what had been reserved for the generations to come. But first I was to prepare myself. For 40 days I was to abstain from the foods and comforts named in the command. Then I was to travel to a high mountain where the sacrifice would be offered and the revelation would begin. The voice ceased. I looked around me and saw no human being. The terror of what had happened overwhelmed me. My strength failed. I fell to the earth like a stone. Then I heard the Holy One command an angel to raise me. The angel came in the likeness of a man. He took my right hand, lifted me to my feet, and told me not to be overcome by fear. His name was Yahoel. He said that the ineffable name of God was with him and gave him authority. He spoke of restraining the living creatures around the heavenly throne, of teaching the celestial song, and of holding power over the great sea creature Leviathan and the forces that threaten creation. Then he said something that joined my past to what was coming. He was the one commissioned to set fire to my father's house because Terah had honored dead idols. Yahoel had not come merely to comfort me. He had come as my guide. I was to go with him to the mountain of God. For 40 days and 40 nights we traveled. I ate no bread and drank no wine. The journey itself became part of the preparation. At last we came to Horeb. There I prepared the animals as I had been commanded. The larger animals were divided. The birds were kept whole. Other angels received the portions of the sacrifice, while Yahoel took charge of the birds. We waited for evening. Then something descended toward the carcasses. Part 4. Azazel at the sacrifice. An unclean bird flew down upon the divided animals. I drove it away. Then the bird spoke. It questioned why I had come to the holy heights. It warned me that I did not belong there. It told me to leave Yahoel and flee before the powers of the heights destroyed me. I turned to my angelic guide. What is this? Yahoel answered plainly. This is Azazel. The unclean bird was the adversarial power, the one associated in the apocalypse with deception, corruption, forbidden revelation, and the seduction of human beings. Yahoel rebuked him. He declared that my portion was in heaven, while Azazel had chosen the earth as the dwelling of his uncleanness. He accused Azazel of spreading lies, trials, and corruption among the generations of the ungodly. Then Yahoel revealed a reversal of destinies. A heavenly garment once belonging to Azazel had been set aside for me. The fallen one's place had been lost. The one who sought the Creator would be raised. Yahoel instructed me to speak against Azazel and send him away from the holy place. I obeyed. I told him to depart into the inaccessible regions appointed for him. Azazel continued trying to speak to me, but I gave him no answer. The sacrifice remained before us. The sun descended. Smoke rose like the smoke of a furnace. The angels who had received the divided portions ascended from the smoke. Then Yahoel took my right hand. He placed me upon the right wing of the pigeon and himself upon the left wing of the turtledove, the two birds that had not been slaughtered or divided. The impossible journey began. Part 5. The Ascent. We rose toward the border of the flaming fire. It was as though many winds carried us upward. Above was a light so intense that I could not describe it. Within that light I saw fiery beings, countless in number, continually changing in appearance. They moved, transformed, worshipped, and cried out in words I did not understand. The sight overcame me. I told Yahoel that I was growing weak and could no longer bear what I saw. He told me to remain beside him and not to fear. The one who loved me was drawing near, he said, but I would not see God's form. Then fire surrounded us. A voice sounded from within it like many waters, like the sea in its greatest uproar. Yahoel bowed his head, and I bowed with him. I wanted to fall to the ground, but there was no ground. The height beneath us seemed to rise and plunge. I could only cling to the instruction I had been given. Yahoel told me to worship and taught me a song of praise. I praised the Eternal One as mighty, holy, uncreated, immortal, self-sufficient, compassionate, and beyond all created light. I asked that the sacrifice be accepted and that the promise of revelation be fulfilled. As the praise continued, the fire opened upward. Beneath it I saw a throne of fire. Around and beneath the throne were living creatures. Each bore 4 faces: the face of a lion, a human being, an ox, and an eagle. Each had wings. Their appearance was terrible and glorious. When their song ended, they turned toward one another in a threatening way. Yahoel moved among them and turned their faces so that they would not confront one another in hostility. He taught them a song of peace. Behind the living creatures I saw a chariot with fiery wheels. The wheels were covered with eyes. Above them stood the throne, wrapped in fire, and around the throne was an indescribable fiery host. I heard the holy voice. The apocalypse had reached the throne vision. Part 6. The heavens open. The voice called my name. Abraham, Abraham. I answered, Here I am. I was commanded to look beneath the height where I stood and to consider the expanses below. The heavens opened beneath me. From the upper region one saw fire, light, dew, angels, and powers of glory. I saw ranks of spiritual beings carrying out commands. Below them I saw the powers associated with the stars and the ordering of the created world. Then the Eternal One told me to look at the stars and number them. I could not. I was only a man of dust. The answer came in the form of a promise. So would my descendants become a people set apart for God, beyond my ability to number them. Yet the name of Azazel appeared again in the explanation of the world, and I was troubled. Why did the adversary possess any share in the present order? Why had the one who tried to turn me away been permitted power at all? Instead of answering with a simple sentence, the vision widened. I was shown the world like a vast picture beneath my feet. I saw the earth and its fruits. I saw creatures that moved upon it. I saw human beings, their righteous works and their ungodliness. I saw lower regions and places of punishment. I saw the sea, its islands, its creatures, and the great Leviathan with the realm assigned to it. I saw rivers and the courses of their waters. I saw the Garden of Eden, its trees, its fruits, its streams, its abundance, and the place of those who had lived righteously. And I saw an enormous multitude of men, women, and children. The vision divided them. Some stood on the right side of the picture. Others stood on the left. I asked what the picture meant. The answer was that I was looking upon the divine plan of the created order and the destinies unfolding within it. The peoples on one side represented those who would become the chosen people descending from me. The other side represented the nations, whose future contained both judgment and, for some, restoration. The picture was not finished. I was told to look again toward Eden. Part 7. Adam, Eve, and Azazel. My eyes turned to the garden. There I saw a man of extraordinary stature and a woman with him. They stood together beneath a tree. The fruit appeared in the vision like a cluster of grapes. Behind the tree stood a strange serpent-like figure. It had a form unlike the serpent known in ordinary life, human-like features, hands and feet, and wings extending from its sides. It held the fruit as Adam and Eve ate. I asked who they were. The voice identified the man as Adam and the woman as Eve. The figure between them represented the ungodliness leading them toward ruin. It was Azazel. I asked why such a power had been allowed to destroy human generations. The reply emphasized human willing as well as temptation. Azazel's power was over those who chose evil and embraced what God hated. That answer led me to the harder question. If God knew and hated evil, why permit human beings to desire it at all? The vision did not escape the problem by pretending that evil was small. I was shown its spread through history. I saw Adam and Eve again with the adversary. I saw Cain acting lawlessly and Abel slain. I saw impurity, jealousy, corruption, theft, disordered desire, and the punishments attached to them. Some of these evils appeared almost as living figures within the vision, as though the human vices themselves had become powers in the picture of the world. Then another scene appeared. I saw a beautiful temple and an altar. Near it stood an image described as an idol of jealousy, shining like metal. Before that image a man worshipped, and a child had been slain upon an altar. I asked how these things belonged together. The voice distinguished the temple and its true priestly purpose from the corruption shown within the same picture. The sanctuary and the sacrifices appointed for God's people belonged to the holy order. The idol represented the anger provoked by idolatry. The slaughter represented murderous sacrifice and the corruption of worship. The same theme that had begun in my father's workshop now appeared on the scale of a nation. Idolatry was not merely foolish because an image could not save itself. It could become destructive. It could distort worship, justify violence, and turn what was meant to be holy into its opposite. Part 8. Why evil is permitted. I asked again why God had allowed such things to exist if their end was judgment. Part 8. Why evil is permitted. I asked again why God had allowed such things to exist if their end was judgment. The answer returned me to my own father. Why had Terah refused to listen to me? Why had he continued in idolatry until his house was destroyed? I answered that he had chosen not to listen, while I had chosen not to follow his works. The voice used my answer against my question. My father had his counsel within himself. I had mine within myself. The divine will likewise possessed its own counsel concerning the ages to come. The text does not turn this into a modern philosophical argument about free will. It gives a story-based answer. Terah and Abraham faced the same confrontation with idolatry and chose differently. Human choice is treated as real, even within a world whose history is also shown as part of a larger divine plan. Then I was told to look at what would happen to my descendants. The picture shifted. From the left side came a foreign people against those on the right. Men, women, and children were attacked. Some were killed, others were carried away. The invaders entered again and again. Then I saw the temple burned. Its holy objects were plundered. The sight broke me. I cried out that these were the people promised to me. Why were they being destroyed? Why had I been lifted into heaven only to see the sanctuary burned and my descendants led away? The answer connected the catastrophe with the idolatry and bloodshed I had just seen in the vision. The people themselves would corrupt the worship given to them. The beautiful sanctuary would become a place in which forbidden images and violence provoked judgment. The vision of the temple's destruction is one of the strongest clues to the historical world behind the apocalypse of Abraham. For the Abraham inside the story, however, it was still the future. For the ancient author and first audience, it was memory transformed into apocalypse. Part 9. How long? I asked the question that appears again and again in apocalyptic literature. How long? How long would the suffering continue? The answer came through a symbolic reckoning of generations, years, and the hours of the age. The surviving wording is difficult and has been transmitted in forms that do not always fit together cleanly. What remains clear is the direction of the revelation. The period of oppression was limited. It would not continue forever. Then the vision showed me another disturbing scene. A man appeared in relation to the nations. Crowds of men, women, and children from among the nations honored him. From among my descendants, some insulted and struck him, while others also honored him. Even Azazel appeared in the scene and gave him homage. The text's explanation connects this man with the final period of the present age and with conflict among both the nations and Abraham's descendants. This passage has been one of the most disputed sections of the entire apocalypse of Abraham. Older editors often treated it as a Christian interpolation and identified the man as Jesus. Some modern scholars have argued that the passage may instead belong to the Jewish work itself and function as a polemical portrayal of Jesus rather than a Christian confession. Because the manuscript contains the passage and its interpretation remains debated, this story edition does not erase it and does not tell the reader which interpretation must be correct. The vision then moved toward the judgment that would precede the age of righteousness. Before the new age could grow, the corrupt order would pass through calamity. 10 great plagues were announced for the nations and for the world at the end of the age. The list included severe distress, the burning of cities, destruction among animals, worldwide hunger, violence among rulers, earthquakes and the sword, hail and snow, attacks by wild beasts, alternating famine and pestilence, flight and warfare, and finally thunder, voices, and destructive shaking of the earth. The imagery is deliberately overwhelming. The old order does not fade politely. It breaks. Part 10. The Elect One and the Return. After the plagues, the voice declared that a trumpet would sound. An elect one would be sent with divine power. This figure would call the scattered people from among the nations. Those who had oppressed and humiliated them would face judgment. Those who had chosen righteousness would enter the coming order with joy. The apocalypse's hope is national and cosmic at the same time. Israel is gathered. The age of oppression ends. The righteous are established. The corrupt powers lose their rule. Then, while the voice was still speaking, the heavenly vision ended. I found myself upon the earth. The transition was sudden. A moment before I had stood amid the fire and expanses of heaven. Now I was again below, carrying memories that could not fit into ordinary sight. I still wanted understanding. The voice continued to reveal the final sequence. Judgment upon the nations, the gathering of the chosen people, and the punishment of those who had rejected the divine way and attached themselves to the corrupt powers of the age. The text closes by returning to the ancient promise made to Abraham. My descendants would go into a foreign land. They would be enslaved and mistreated. But the nation that enslaved them would itself be judged. The apocalypse therefore ends where the biblical covenant story begins to widen into history. Abraham has been shown much more than the future of one family. He has seen a world in which worship divides truth from falsehood, in which human choice has consequences, in which evil is real but temporary, in which the temple can be both sacred and corrupted, in which heavenly powers surround the throne, and in which history moves toward judgment and restoration. The young man who once watched a stone idol fall at his feet has now seen the heavens themselves open. And the question that began the story has become cosmic. What is worthy of worship?